I'm Lesley Lokko. I used to be an academic and an architect, and I now write sex and shopping novels. We're here tonight to talk about three interrelated things: creativity, technology, and the future. For the most part, as a writer, unless you write science fiction, you deal mostly with two tenses, the past and the present. The act of writing is fueled mostly by memory, a mixture of what really happened and what the writer imagines happened. When I think about what I do as a writer, I think about it in terms of going back, of going inside something, usually inside my own head, and that involves a backwards movement. In contrast, architecture, and by that I mean the design of buildings, it's mostly an act of projection, of moving into the future, of anticipating something that isn't yet there. So for me, the creative act in architecture is largely to do with something that hasn't yet happened, as opposed to writing, which is about something that has. Both practices, however, rely almost entirely on creativity and increasingly on technology. It's rare to find a project in which the concerns about the environment, materiality, and the future are part and parcel of the creative process and not just a technical or a mechanical add-on. When I gave up architecture and moved back to Ghana, which is where I grew up, to work as a full-time writer, one of the first things I did when I got back wasn't to write a novel, oddly enough, it was to build a house. And in a moment of madness, I decided to build it out of mud. What was interesting was that the choice of mud was both traditional and futuristic. The house requires only the minimal energy to cool itself and is therefore ahead of the game, and yet mud is the oldest building material known to man. My house, in a sense, was built from the very earth on which it stands, and as a writer, that has a certain kind of poetry. There are many reasons why mud is no longer popular, but perhaps the most compelling reason is cultural, that many Africans don't see mud as modern enough. Mud belongs to the past, to the old so-called primitive ways of doing things. Steel, glass, and cement belong to the future. At the moment, I live in three places almost simultaneously: Johannesburg, Edinburgh, and Accra. But the bottom line is that 20 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to live and work this way. When I first contemplated giving up architecture for fiction 15 years ago, the internet was still in its infancy. I'd never sent an email, never typed in the words www, never made a call on a mobile, and certainly never heard of Skype. But I do know that in my lifetime, some very profound changes have taken place around the issue of communication. If you believe, as I do, that we all come into the world seeking relationships at all levels, in all forms, and not just with each other, but with our environment, then the role that technology plays in either facilitating or hampering those relationships is a vital one. In terms of technology and its rapid capacity to utterly transform our world, we're at the brink of something I don't think we fully understand, at least not yet. There are three mistakes people commonly make when thinking about the future. The first is to assume that everything will change, that nothing will remain the same. The second is to assume that nothing will change and that everything will remain the same. The third and most dangerous assumption to make about the future is not to think about it at all.